Hey guys, so you probably wouldn't know how to make farm accounts, right? Well, if you didn't know, I for one may have noticed I've always been on my main account, right? I don't have farm accounts, but I know a ton of people that have, and I can tell you about everything you need to know how to really operate one, right? Which is to say, all you got to do is basically tap on your name, right? You want to go to settings, you want to go to characters, and you want to create a new character in your state. I know, crazy idea, right? All you got to do then is start over, make your account, get it to where it can produce resources, and then you just got to be efficient. How do you get efficient? Well, you go into your research tab, go into your growth tab. You go in here and you level it up a little bit, right? You get to where you've got a reasonable amount of troops, a reasonable amount of stuff, and then you just go through the economy tree, and you do all of the economy tree by getting all your outputs and your gathering done. And then you might be thinking, well, it doesn't stop there, does it? Yeah, you're right. It doesn't. It never ends. Um, so what you do is you go down here and you pick up all of the skills, okay, that are going to increase your gathering speed. And all the blue heroes are the ones that have all of these skills, okay? So you work on those. Then what you do is you get on there, your beautiful, wonderful alt, and you gather. But how do you gather? Well, pretty straightforward. You gather in your territory, not out of it. What do you mean? Well, here's the difference. If you were to look at something like this, for example, tap the arrow, and you'll notice that, nodes can be vulnerable. You probably don't want to do this during Brother in Arms, right? You go around, you do your gathering, and okay, you come back. And then you go in here and you go to your storehouse. You're like, I wonder what I've got for resources. That tells you what your protected resource count is. Okay, and that's the amount of resources that are protected. Now you might be wondering, okay, so I've got some protected resources. What do I do? How do I get those out? To my main account. Well, it's pretty straightforward. You take your main account, you find your alternate, you attack it, and then you get your resources. But you might be wondering, well, hold up. I attacked it. I didn't get any resources. What did I do wrong? Well, see, this thing told you called a storehouse protects a certain amount of them. So what you're going to have to do is on that alternate, you're going to need to make those resources non-protected. To do that, you just need to upgrade a building and then cancel it. And that will put the resources in the non-protected resources category. Then you hit it and you'll get the resources. Pretty straightforward. Now, you might be wondering, okay, now is this the most efficient way of using my time? Should I have like 1 account, 2 account, 3 account, 5 account, 10 account, 20 account, 30 account, 40 account? Well, this is where you get into the realm of what I describe as botting. And yes, this is a thing. While it is probably bannable, I know of tons of alliances that will build nothing but probably 6 to 7, maybe even 10 or so accounts at a time. Okay, if you're wondering how do you go about operating 10 accounts on your phone, ask the people that run them. But if you ask me, if you want to do them all at once, what you do is you go in, you download something called BlueStacks, or an Android emulator for that matter, and all you do is basically open up an instance of a phone, and you rinse repeat, you log into an account, aka your account, and you go into the character, you pick the character, and then you rinse repeat, right? And obviously you go through and you do your characters, and you just go through and do them in rotation, and that's one way to do it, right? A lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of energy is going to be spent basically operating 10 or so accounts. So, after a certain point, you yourself are probably going to find yourself going, well, this is stupid. I have 10 accounts. I'm gathering. Why am I not growing any faster? Well, truly speaking, there is option A, which is to be the Farmville. That is to say, you can be the guy who has a bunch of farm accounts and you can funnel. That is to say, what you can do is you can go, I need me resources and I need them now, and I'm going to continuously funnel myself resources by attacking them, and I'm going to build up to be a big, big, big player, right? The thing a lot of people, I don't know why, but they must have disconnected the most obvious thing. You can build farm accounts, or you could just farm the farm accounts. That is to say, and this might be a little bit out there, guys. I don't know. I've always found myself wondering, why did no one think of this sooner? But you could, after all, just go find an alliance that's tinier than you, and you'd farm them instead. That is kind of the point, I guess. But, that's frowned upon. You'll get somebody mad at you. It's kind of the point of the game, I thought. But, it's just the thought. I, for one, went that route. It makes more sense to attack players and steal hundreds of millions of resources to the next guy that has a bunch of resources than it is to sit there and run in circles. But it depends on what kind of player you are. You have to be able to be willing to take risks to be able to get ahead. And that also requires money, time, and energy. All these things are not easy to acquire, especially when playing free to play. So typically, farm accounts and those that exist out there are leveraged by the players that don't spend. Now, that is not to say that that is the only way to go about doing this. I would say you most often will find that you can have a bunch of farm accounts, and you can stack up like a stupid amount of resources, right? Just from bagged resources over time. I, for one, will tell you that if you're even like a mild spender, it's relatively easy to get these kind of resource counts. Okay, I can just, at a moment's will, make resources drain because of, just the sheer amount of chests that I have. That is to say, you can even, believe it or not, right, do events, hit beasts, and you can get resources from hitting them. I mean, look at the drops there. It's a 200,000 drop. Who's to ignore that? Your stamina bar is not going to be disappointed if you decide to waste a little bit of it. It's going to get used anyway. But consciously, a lot of people probably notice this little bugger up here. And this guy here, when you get pets, and you get this wonderful, wonderful burden bearer ability, it's your best friend. So what you're going to do, you're going to go find a level 8 node when you get to him. Okay? You're going to get that 14 mil. And watch this. It's going to give me all 14 million. Just like that. So if you're sitting here wondering, maybe I could be doing that with all my gathering accounts. You could. You very well could. But you also got to acquire it. You also got to take the time to do it. And you also got to do that for 5 or 6 accounts. And is it worth it? I don't know. That's a good question. If you want to maintain 5 accounts, all the power to you. That's what the power players do. I, for one, can tell you it's not really worth your time unless you are someone wanting to play this game strictly free to play and don't want to be harmed, or how do you say, don't want to be held by the balls by not having any resources. If that isn't your cup of tea, then that is ultimately the answer. Now, I will say that there are some things that you can do to nitpick, making your farm account, which is to say that, if you want a quick, easy view of what you have, just tap the top right and it'll tell you what your total resource count is, and then it's not so tricky. So if you're wanting to know how much resources do I have, now you know. You just go to the backpack tab and hit the arrows at the top right. It's relatively straightforward. I would say about 90% of what I would do if I were anybody else, really. Just go find an alliance you don't like and find their farms and hit their farms. Hell, there's even entire alliances that make themselves relatively well known in the leaderboard. That it's a farm alliance. It's like, okay, well, you can get burned to the ground. I'll take that. Thank you very much. Very rarely do the guys that run those farm accounts are going to do much of anything about it if you're big enough. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. You get big enough and you get enough whales in your alliance, very few people are going to take the time to really bother you. It's really not in their favor. But that is the difference between being a kraken / whale versus, say, being a dolphin or even being a small, medium-sized, like low-key spender, right? Or even not a spender, right? It's there's nothing too tricky to it. I will say, though, that for the vast majority of the free-to-play players out there that want to be able to leverage. I think one thing that jumps out at me as far as even free-to-play, right? One thing you'll want to do on those accounts is save your gems. Because what you can do is you can actually turn around and go into the shop here and just pick up your meat. And it's not much, but it adds up, you know. And if you were doing that every day, you'll build up a relatively large stash of resources. And then for any reason, hey, you need to pop a couple 100 mil, you'll have it. You know, and it's relatively easy to acquire that, especially if you're doing rallies on polar terrors from time to time. Because all you're going to be doing, basically, more or less, like I can do a bunch of level 6s and it won't even phase me. Like I'm capable of just mollywopping the living heck out of a bunch of terrors at any given time, at every hour of the day. And that is part of the benefit of being able to just hit auto join. Okay, a lot of people don't do it, but boy, you can literally fund your account through an auto join. It is such a stupid simple way to get ahead in this game. It's not even funny. I mean, vast majority of players don't do it, but I mean, it really can make or break your bank, especially because you've got so many rewards coming out of the chests. You know, loot chests alone will give you a little bit of resources and a little bit of speeds, but it tacks up, especially when you're hitting each and every one of those monsters, too. You know, like here, you can see that I hit a bunch of snow leopards earlier, and, you know, it's like, the loot is okay. You're going to get some steel, but you're going to get a lot of resources and XP. You know, if you compare that to doing, say, like a rally, for example, you're going to get epic hero shards, you're going to get some gems, you're going to get some hardened alloys, and you're going to get healing speeds, and then resources. I, for one, think the healing speeds is the best argument for it. As I've gotten higher and higher tiered versions of these rallyable options, obviously you want to take advantage of events as they come along. Like the moment Gina's revenge shows up, go ballistic on that. You will almost certainly benefit from doing that. But again, these are all my tips for you guys, for those of you out there that have farm accounts and you're wanting to build up on them. Because ultimately what I like to do is think in terms of not these being farm accounts, but as alternates. And use your alternates to fill rallies, use your alternates to give you a leverage on resource building. Don't neglect them, and you'll ultimately end up being one of the better players in the entire state because of it. And it's not an accident. But again, when you look at someone like me, and you may be thinking, surely you use farm accounts. My honest answer to that question is no, I don't. I rob from the players that have farm accounts, and I ruin their entire guilds as a process. But hey, that's just my honest 2 cents on the subject, and hopefully it helped you out. See you guys at the next video.